Greetings, YouTube. As the title of this video says, this is going to be about anxiety. My anxiety levels have been significantly higher as of late, and it's exclusively related to my job. Now, I work in manufacturing, and I have for 35 years, though not exactly the same job for that entire time. I have spent the bulk of my job career in the same company. Though at two different times, back in the 80s and now this coming October, if I make it till October, will be 20 years for me. But in the 80s, I worked for 5 years. And as is the want of capitalism, the exploitation of humans is one of the core tenets of capitalism. They need to exploit us as much as possible to make the biggest buck. So it's in the company's best interest to exact every single cycle from every single employee every single day. That they need everyone making the exact same number of pieces every day, regardless of the reality of the world that we live in. Doesn't matter how well machines may be working, or the materials that go into our machines, or it's Tuesday because the machines that we run are not as Swiss watch-like as many people might imagine they would be. It's been my experience that our machines are as organic as the people that run them. And they have moods, and they vary from day to day, and they can be affected by the atmosphere of the weather, and they just sometimes don't want to function. And sometimes there are variables that are so slight that no one knows what's the reason that something is not running well, or the reason something is running well. Because I have run processes that have traditionally run very poorly, and so some days they run smooth as silk, and nobody knows why. It makes no sense. I have examples I can talk about, like we have parts that you have to be heated before they go into a machine. Well, there are times when I put those parts in there and they drop into their position like a puzzle piece, smooth, absolutely flawlessly, even though 99.9% you have to push them into the cavity. Sometimes they just go click for no reason. If you tell someone else about this, they probably won't believe you because they've run the same process. They're like, nah, that doesn't happen. And sometimes it does. Makes no sense, but it happens. But lately, the company has been really pushing to get as many cycles per shift out of each employee as possible. And this has ramped up the anxiety levels for me at work, to the point where I am in a state of anxiety while I'm at work for the entire time I'm there. And I'm anxious about work when I'm not there, which is always fun, because I make a concerted effort not to think about work when I'm not at work, because I work in a factory. There are no presses here. Thinking about work does me no good if I'm not at work. But I find myself thinking about work because of my anxiety. And lately, whenever I close my eyes, I find myself dreaming about being at work. Not necessarily my job, but just being at work, which is not restful. So there have been days when my anxiety levels have never fallen. And it's wearing. It takes a toll. In the last week, I have had 2 people walk up to me and tell me I look tired. One, a dear friend whose opinion I hold very close to my heart and who I love a great deal. And the other person is someone I've spoken to once, but felt compelled to walk up and tell me, you look tired. Well, they weren't wrong. I told them that. And it's something I've not had to deal with for quite a while. My anxiety levels for a very long time were under control, and now they're kind of ramping up. And it's consuming all the air in the room. It means I'm not working on my anger problems, which is something I had been working with for a very long time. months. I've been working, trying to piece them apart, how to handle them, how to create mental frameworks so that I will be less angry going into situations and then be able to get out of them faster. Well, a lot of that work I had been doing is just going out the windows because I just don't have the mental space to dedicate to it any longer. Now I'm just wrapped up in anxiety. By the time you folks see this video, I will have spoken to my therapist the previous day. So hopefully my therapist will have some clever and thoughtful suggestions on how I can be less anxious, and implementing them is going to be the difficult part. I don't want to be anxious. I don't enjoy being anxious. I don't imagine anyone does. I don't like having my job haunt me. I'm not a lawyer or a doctor. I'm not a writer or anything. I work in a place, and the only place I can do my job is at my place of business. It is not something I can really take home with me unless it's in the form of anxiety. So I don't want that, and dealing with it is no fun at all. And one of the frustrations for me is that when there is a conflict in the world of manufacturing between reality and a managerial position of what they think reality is, reality and the employees who live there lose. That we have to bend ourselves to what the managers think is reality rather than what is reality. And it has been my experience over 35 years that products, here's a product, products get out the factory door in spite of, rather than because of, engineers and management teams. That the troopers on the ground, the soldiers and the sergeants, are the ones that win the battle and get things out the door. And the officers are the ones that are often complicating that process rather than helping it. And of course, no person in management will ever believe you if you said that. Just as I don't know of any engineers that will believe me when I tell them that every press is different, that if I take a mold from that press and put it in that press, it is not going to work the same. And in fact, if I take that mold out of that press, wait a month, put it back in, it is not going to behave the same. And that how it operates on Tuesday is going to be different how it operates on Thursday, even if no parameters have been changed. And you have to adapt to that every goddamn day. And they won't believe you because they don't do it every day. I've had a whole lot of people in my life that were wearing ties or business casual tell me that operators know more about the process than anybody else. And yet we are the last person they will listen to when we say, hey, this process doesn't work the way you think it does. Because that runs counter to their view of reality, as opposed to the reality that I actually live with every single day. So there is some frustration there on top of the anxiety generated by managerial's position and views of reality, which, again, most often differ from reality itself. And I've found this to be true no matter where I worked. So it isn't just my company. This is a pervasive concept. And I imagine it plagues dealing with people that work in offices and people that work at studios and everywhere else. That people in management don't know what it is like out there where the rubber meets the road, on the sharp, pointy end of things. And they frankly don't care because they don't have to. It doesn't affect them. The anxieties and the stresses and the problems they create are utterly abstract for them. It doesn't bother them at all. But it does bother the people that have to deal with them. And right now, in my particular case, in my job, that's me. So, I've waxed poetic long enough on this particular topic. I'm just tired, and I'm anxious, and it's adversely affected my worldview and my mental health, and I'm hoping that I can find some way around it in the near future. And I'm hoping that you are not having to deal with this in this late stage of capitalism, that I'm hoping will eventually lead us to a post-capitalist structures of some variety, um, where we can finally make sure that the people that make the wealth are the ones that benefit from the wealth and are not exploited by those who hoard the wealth.